All right. So I put together this little graphic to explain what's happening with the economy. A lot of times people are wondering why things are going up or going down 10% or 5-10% while we're going through these wild swings. And a lot of times the financial media won't really cover the true reasons, or they wait until after a crisis occurs before they actually explain what's happening, so you don't have time to really prepare. And I mean, these big kind of crises, if they happen only once every 10 years, it's easy to forget that, they were inept at their duty of informing you about financial issues. So this explains the basic dynamics. I see the current flutters in the market as an extension of the 2008 financial crisis, right? So in this analogy, you have the snake bite, which is the financial crisis, the mortgage implosion back in 2008. And, whatever reason, bad bank policies, lending practices, etc., it caused the banks to seize up. It causes the, widespread defaults, and banks stopped loaning, and was a threat to the entire world economy. So that's where the problem kind of emerged. And well, it seems like, and they'll tell you that they fixed it, and this is a distant memory. So glad we healed you from the snake bite by putting a tourniquet on it. That's not really what happened. It was a stopgap measure. It was a quick fix. So what happened during this crisis is you had the near $1 trillion bailout, and all that. What that is the Federal Reserve bought up the bank's toxic assets or toxic mortgage book and put it on their balance sheet. And by doing that, you couldn't have all these assets that were not being delivered on in the economy, stinking up the place. All right, so they put it on their own balance sheet, and right now that balance sheet sits at about $5 trillion. All right, completely, as the Rothschilds say, completely unheard of, completely untreaded ground at this point. So this is why most of these big players are in cash at the moment, trying to insulate themselves from the current situation. And the thing that's happening now is they basically have been building that balance sheet for 10 years. I mean, they let that run from 2008, and they kept putting it on their books, and they didn't try to quote unquote normalize things. And so now you have a new policy, which is they're gonna do the strategy of normalizing the balance sheet to try to get the world economy to trust the American economy, American financial leadership again. So they're raising interest rates bit by bit. So the loaning rate is 0.25%. They keep on boosting that up. They're trying to get 1% a year. Probably going to end up trying to get it to 3%. But at the same time, they're offloading their balance sheet. So they're starting out like $10 billion a month. They're going to increase that to $20 billion. They're going to increase that to $50 billion. So they have a gradual schedule of when they plan to offload what they bought in order to protect the economy. Because they say, well, all things are back to normal again, we can start offloading things. So, and then you have the aspect of money printing itself, which is not necessarily buying up mortgage access or dealing with that original problem, which is, they're actually going out and buying stocks to boost the price up in stocks. So a lot of central banks are completely transparent about it, that they bought up a ton of shares of Apple, a ton of shares of different technology stocks, usually, or small caps, or government bonds, in order to keep things fairly stable. So that's what we're seeing now. It is kind of a natural financial environment. It is a risky financial environment, but the tremors, there's like a 3-month delay as far as when it actually affects the stock market. So they started this offloading, normalizing about 3 months ago, just tiny bits, like $10 billion a month. And, oh, we did a good job, right? So, but 3 months later, you get these wild fluctuations in the stock market. You see a run up in yields in the bond market, which means money's leaving the bond market. And that in and of itself is a sign of ill health in a financial economy, causes algorithms to pull out, go to cash, and causes stock markets to drop. And so that's the kind of dilemma we're at. We're in kind of a corner in the economy, and they're having trouble trying to square the circles, so to speak. And so what are the outcomes here, right? So what are the potentials? The interesting thing is, as far as money printing goes, we're the world's default currency, so we can print as much as we want. The question is, whether that currency is going to be worth anything, because every time you print a dollar, it devalues the rest of them. So it's a way to get out of debt, but it's also a way to debase your currency. And so they have to run this risk, which is either death by poison or death by heart attack. And that's the kind of problem. If it's death by poison, it's deflation, which means stock prices go down, but the value of the currency goes up. And so if you have a job in that situation, you still have good buying power. So that's one thing if they let it fall, and they're probably going to let it fall a little bit before they come in with some more heavy-duty money printing. The other aspect is the other problem is the adrenaline shot, which is that they keep printing money, they're going to give you a heart attack, and in the financial world, this is hyperinflation or elevated inflation. Right now, you see it in the appendages first, which is interesting because the whole world is on a kind of dollar-pegged system for the most part. And so, yeah, Venezuela is having problems, but it's really reflective of our own kind of financial mismanagement. And that's the danger here. So they can keep printing, and it may keep you alive, but ultimately it could lead to a heart attack. But so what is the probabilities question, right? You actually want to be prepared for both scenarios, which is, whether it's death by inflation or deflation or death by hyperinflation, there's assets that you can hold that isn't going to debase your wealth or destroy your wealth. And there's also ways to really get out of this body itself, which means if you have money, you don't necessarily have to keep it in the U.S. stock market or completely 100% correlated to the U.S. stock market. So let's go over some of those kind of strategies right now. So first strategy is the classic one. It used to be very, very common for decades of money managers that were conscious of currency crises and the frequency of it to put 10% of your portfolio into silver and gold. Precious metals have always transitioned people from one financial system to another. It is fire insurance for your portfolio, and it's going to do incredibly well as in the near future. In this scenario, which is what almost every country is dealing with at this point, and the more a closer relationship to the dollar in the U.S. that they have, the more they're facing the similar kind of problem. I mean, you see this in Japan, you see this in Greece, you see this in Europe. Same thing. So that is one thing that I bring up. Now, this isn't advice you'll necessarily get from your financial advisor because they aren't commissioned on this. So they don't get a percentage when you decide to go into precious metals, or they recommend paper derivatives, which are a complete Ponzi scheme. So precious metals, extremely valuable, extremely prudent in this situation. even if you're going to ride a lot of your portfolio out in the stock market. And more than likely, I see a melt up scenario. I mean, the Venezuelan, the stock market is doing outstandingly well. Now, they're in a hyperinflation, but if your money's in the stock market, that's not going to hit you as bad because, you know, the amount of your currency is going up, even though the buying power is going down. Okay, so that's protection in this kind of hyperinflationary environment. You can do shorts and hedges and crash insurance. I mean, there's different words for it. You know, you can talk to your financial advisor about protecting you from the snake bite scenario, which is deflation, which is a crash scenario. And more than likely, you're going to see a little bit of both. You're going to see a 30% pullback. It could even be, some people are saying 70, 80% pullback. And then you can see a 200% run after that if they start trying to print their way out of it. And just so you know, statistically, countries that central banks have always tried to print their way out of it. I mean, it's almost politically a win-win, even though it kills the currency. It's a way for the government to get out of debt because they can just print their debts away. And it's a way to delay the effects of deflation or releasing this tourniquet and letting your body adjust to the poison and just kind of heal itself. And that is, but they have always chosen to try to print their way out of it. So that's the end game, ultimately, probably where they're going to go. Now, you can do other things that insulate you from this type of situation, which is like cryptocurrencies, which are not tied to this system. So we talk about kind of getting out of this Frankenstien economy. That's another way to do it. It's not traditional, but you know, I think it's the next level of where money's going to be because it's based on sound money principles, and humanity tends to gravitate towards that with time. There's also things like emerging markets, and you know, that's another approach you can take. Yes, they're going to be somewhat correlated to the U.S. economy, but it's a way to kind of insulate yourself from this type of unnatural scenario. And this is what comes to mind. I mean, we are in uncharted territories, says the Rothschild. So that was a statement that I heeded in kind of structuring my portfolio. So just some little insight about where we're at and how to prepare for the kind of next things. There's plenty of opportunity here. There's you know, probably once in a lifetime financial opportunity in this. So but you have to understand what's happening in order to play it correctly. So I appreciate you listening. Take care. Bye-bye.